think we're a bit wonky.
Pardon?
We're like Mount Pleasant.
There's a slope.
That's the one.
Social distance, though.
It's on the wonk, yeah.
Social distance slope.
League Express out today. I didn't realise it had gone up to £1.80. Have
the right change ready.
Till I went to the co-op. Here's a letter from David Whitford of London, who writes, the headline is "Not Watching but Judging," which is like many listeners to this programme. We are well into the new Super League season, he says, but yet again nothing has changed. They were supposed to be adopting some of the rules from the NRL, but in reality they have not. The play the ball is still non-existent. And it's still there. The two markers at the ruck stand behind each other. It's meant to, beside each other rather. It's meant to be called pillar defence, but it's more like a column. It's like with the Guardian, isn't it? The second marker is clearly offside. The defensive line is in front of the referee. The tackle's like watching WWF. It's not called that anymore. It's not been called that for years. Later on this year, COVID permitting, we will have the Rugby League World Cup, or to put it into its proper context, the Pick a Country to Play For World Cup. The game here is also a marketing nightmare. Why can't they go back to 1 to 17? So you can sell shirts with numbers on the back, because that's marketing. Instead you have the fullback wearing number 29 and all the other numbers are all over the place. Sadly, the game in this country is dying and the powers that be are frankly not interested. 25 years ago, Rugby League was the second sport in the UK. What was it 25 years ago? 1997? 8?
Yes.
Was Rugby League the second biggest sport in the country in 1997, 98?
Well, it was claimed to be the second biggest spectator sport. Yeah.
Was it really? Now it is 8th and dropping. What's in front of us? Well, apparently, in front of us is ladies' football, which is still football. It's still football, and rugby union. Rugby union has a higher profile than league, but it did 25 years ago. I don't want to, on anyone's chips. The game over here is a non-spectacle, and I, for one, cannot watch it. But fortunately, at the weekend, I can watch real rugby league, where you see proper play the balls with markers square, the defence standing onside, and the referee with the referee in real tackles. It's also on Sky. It's called the NRL. Thanks, David from London, there for writing letters to the Rugby League Express about the sport you don't watch anymore.
Well,
I'm trying to read the four pages at the back.
I think it's great that somebody's allegedly more negative than... Can I start with 4 positives?
Apparently YouTube's not working, but yeah, go on.
4 positives this week.
Before we introduce our guest, yeah.
That are not anything to do with results. Well, one of them is. Barrow.
Yes.
Who gave away thousands of tickets to young people and were rewarded with a very, very healthy attendance of just short of 2,000 for their game. That's an initiative that should be applauded, and Barrow have been brilliant throughout the pandemic shutdown with having their beer garden and just looking for ways to appeal to the audience as it is today. So hats off to Barrow. Our friends at Coventry, arguably their best performance since becoming a semi-professional team. Beating Rochdale is a fantastic feat. Castleford Tigers women, who were soundly beaten by York in the semi-final last week and came back and beat York in a league game, which I'm told was arguably one of the best games of the season in terms of competitiveness, men or women. And Dean Hadley, who played magnificently for Hull KR in a mask. Is that too positive?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Let's just bring the whole thing crashing down. I mean, it's a minute of positivity, a couple of hours.
Well, that'll do, won't it? I think.
Do you want to introduce the guest from the Kirkstall Lane end?
It's Jonathan Doidge who wrote this book. Super League for the first 10 years. Phil Kaplan and Jonathan R. Doidge. Who are they?
Well,
it's got pictures and everything.
It had to have, because otherwise we'd have to find more words.
Gary Hetherington with a chain.
I threatened to. I wrote a few paragraphs and I threatened to write more, and he said, "Look, I'll put your name on it if you don't write anything else. Leave it to me."
Did you argue about whose name
for it?
Was that the big argument?
It's leadership and awareness, isn't it? You're going to be a captain.
I remember with our massive discussion when we sort of got going with it and who we were going to speak to. And I particularly remember, for me, the standout was doing the Vic Wakeling Sky Sports interview to find out if Maurice Lindsay really had done what he told you that he'd done to initiate summer rugby. And to be fair to Vic, he sort of corroborated Maurice's story.
Party line.
That book available in all good charity shops?
Yes, hope so.
I've not seen it in many. I keep looking now. It's a bit like the Fly Fishing with, by J.R. Hartley. I've only got one copy in the whole world.
It did go out of print, but safe to say they only did 6. So, no.
So if you've got one, you've got a collector's item.
Sell it to me so I can have 2 copies.
Oh, worth at least 2p on Amazon.
50p, 49p.
I told you it would be a different book if we wrote it now about Super League the first 25 years.
You've got another 15 years to add in.
Well, I reckon that when that book finished, the competition was most definitely on the up. And you'd have to say that if you were to write that now, particularly with all the furore that's gone on this week, we are divided and lacking in direction.
What furore? What upset? What are we upset about now? I'm just off to check the thing's working.
He's off again.
I don't think Facebook's working.
But I think the product on the field was as good as it's been in the Super League era in that first 10 years, and probably after about 5 years or so. Let's say 2000 to 2005, that sort of spell. For me, anyway, watching the game, I think we had some great players playing it, and I don't think that the actual product has been bettered since then. On the field.
No. Although, interesting week this week in Super League with the divergence of scores. But one thing we talked about last week was, were we getting to see a game that was entertaining? And even though we've seen some huge margins this week, attacking rugby was back. I don't know if it's because the sun was out or it was a bank holiday weekend, but clearly if you follow one of the teams that didn't win, you would be concerned and upset about the way your team is playing. But the overview of seeing sides create points rather than try and roll over their opposition was actually quite refreshing.
Yeah, there's looking down the list, and as you know, I was involved in the Roses cricket match this weekend, folks, so I've been focused on that over the last few days, I've got to say, and didn't see much of the live stuff this weekend. But some left field scores, and the Dragons, when the 48-0 against Wigan was the one that really, more so than Leeds beating Cass, you just thought, what, when I saw that?
Dragons were fantastic. I have to say now, in just under 2 weeks, the Dragons won away at Hull and wrecked the unbeaten records at home of St Helens and Wigan. The joint top. There might be something about them this year. I mean, the thing with the Dragons is you're always waiting for either a disciplinary issue. Oh, funnily enough, they had one of those.
Indeed.
We'll have to talk about that.
We'll have to.
And that during a game they've had periods of dominance, but then their undoing is normally of their own making.
Yeah. Now
they seem to be combining that structure that Steve McNamara wants them to play with flair in key positions. And I haven't seen a better player this year than Ben Garcia. I think he's been absolutely outstanding. He's locked in the loose forward position. James Maloney is clearly now feeling very much at home in the south of France, and is a key driver for that side. And Sam Tompkins is the best fullback in the competition at the moment. If Michael McAlorum was getting back to his best. He was really influential. And then off the bench into the hooking role, they brought Arthur Morgue, who's arguably the most impressive young French talent that we've seen for a long time. And that balance and mix seems almost perfect at the moment. They really could be contenders.
They could. They're a very, very good side on paper. There's looked to have plenty of depth, bit of choice for Steve McNamara in certain positions as well. No, I think you're right. They could go a long, long way. But they're just, it's been the same ever since they started, hasn't it? Consistency on their trips, on their travels, is a difficult thing for them to be able to master.
And actually, if anything has been a positive benefit for them over COVID, and it clearly wasn't in the cost that was incurred, they got used to getting on a plane at very short notice and flying over here. I think, was it of the 13 games they played last year, 9 of them were over here.
Yeah.
So now you would think they have mastered what they need to do on a game day to come over here and perform. But I think they've got professionals in the group that are saying, this isn't going to be an issue because we're not going to let it be an issue. Julian Bousquet is arguably, again, the most improved player in the competition. He's looking, impact-wise, one of the best props in the game at the moment. And it's clearly working. They're enjoying the style that they're playing. They've got threat on the wings. Tom Davis, I still think, will be the leading try scorer this year if he gets the opportunities. Dean Farre is a joy to watch.
Okay,
absolutely. the balance is there. Wigan, slightly different perhaps.
Well,
but the big incidents come out of it wasn't the thrilling tries that they scored, but the incident of Mr Hardacre and Mr Tompkins J.
Yeah. Again, both of them.
It's.
I think the issue is the punishment that's been doled out. That it is deemed that a headbutt is 2 matches, case done and dealt with. Punching an opponent in retaliation for that headbutt, and again, the person who was headbutted was the assailant's brother, which doesn't necessarily condone it any more than it's one of your teammates, but clearly it was. He has to appear in front of the disciplinary and will get a longer sentence. Is that balance right?
This is an age-old thing. I mean, how long do you want to go back in terms of
what message
off? The retaliator tends to get dealt with more strongly, not always, but tends to get dealt with more strongly than the one who perpetrated the initial offence. You and I have stood on many terraces and sat in many press boxes and seen those sorts of things, and somebody has a niggle and they might take a 10-minute breather and somebody else throws in the left and that's it. They might not disappear for that game, but come disciplinary time, you know.
I just think it sends out a very mixed message that we're very conscious at the moment of appealing to young kids and bringing them in the game, showing parents that this is a sport that is responsible and that their children will be safe. And you just think, whilst we are not condoning punching, should a headbutt be worth more than a 2-game ban? And that's nothing to do with who did it and his disciplinary record. It's just what message do you want to send out?
It's dangerous play. It's aggressive behaviour on both counts.
Well, it's arrestable behaviour in a street.
In the street, yeah.
Should a punch and a headbutt be an immediate red card? Forget about the yellow nonsense.
That's the other thing, that I think Joel Tompkins should clearly have been sent off rather than yellow carded. But I just wonder, let's say he gets 4 games when he appears in front of the disciplinary. Has what he's done been valued as being twice as bad as an original headbutt?
Yeah. There's a definite danger there.
What does that say about policing the sport?
But let's be honest, they're both just sending off offences, aren't they? For me, they're straight reds. If you headbutt somebody, if you punch somebody.
No, I think
in the modern game, the game that we grew up watching, it was part of the game, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, you got sent off if you didn't.
Well, yeah, it's a completely different slant on things, wasn't it?
I think I saw a documentary on BBC Wales about concussion, which is the latest in a long line of really detailed and interesting research that's going on, solely about rugby. It was about Welsh Rugby Union, mainly centred around Alex Popham, who, a bit like Stevie Ward, has suffered terribly as a young man post-playing. Authored by Wyra Davis, who is excellent. I would recommend it. It's on the BBC iPlayer, that everybody watches it. But a lot of it is about responsibilities of sport going ahead. And I'm just not 100% convinced that an automatic 2-game ban for a headbutt is actually giving the right message to young kids who are out there, who we know will copy behaviour on the field.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've still watched, as you have, enough junior rugby league to see that. I've seen some real stuff watching one of my sons play, so yeah. That wasn't with North Leeds Leopards.
No.
That was when he moved clubs.
They were the paradigms of entertaining open rugby.
We have been asked...
Never won, but...
Yes, referee. Thank you, referee. Sorry, yes, it was a penalty. You're right, absolutely spot on.
We have been asked by a Featherstone Rovers fan if we've had special dispensation off the Rugby Football League for our Subbuteo pitch, which obviously had a bit lopped off the side.
Yeah.
Because it's obviously not the minimum width of the... Well, it's Subbuteo Rugby Football League, not the Rugby Football League.
It's not regulation.
It's Subbuteo Ralph Rimmer around. Who's that? Someone from Subbuteo Our League there.
Is this Neil Fox kicking for Australia? From distance?
No, that's Blackpool Borough over there. I don't know. It's Blackpool Borough.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Blackpool Borough versus Leeds.
To get these mince pies sorted.
There's the referee giving the yellow card to Sam Tompkins. Joel Tompkins. Ron Tompkins.
Again, the message about the pitch is clearly one that we should be concerned about.
Do whatever you want.
having started on a very positive nature and mentioned 4 things that we're absolutely overwhelmed with joy about, we're already in the realms of the size of pitches and disciplinary.
I mean, I'm putting it down to things I'm not really that bothered about because it doesn't affect me, which, that's everything else in life.
You can strip it back to, why do you bother having any rules if you're not going to play to them
I was trying to explain to my nephew the other day, because we were at Bellevue, and I said, I played here once, because I did for my school, because we mentioned this before. And Bellevue's obviously, I think, the full regulation 100 metres, and Castleford is, of course, not, because we're talking about 40-20s, and a 40-20 at Wakefield is slightly longer than a 40-20 at Castleford. But Castleford's been that way forever, so it is what it is. But Odsal was wider, and now it's not quite as wide.
But it's within what is termed to be the minimum. So again, how can you give dispensation for a game to be played on that surface? I don't know. I know York were less than impressed because they felt that it would hamper their expansive style in the end. The result would indicate that it was probably a bit more.
What have they done? They've got the edging tool and
they've got stock cars.
Whipped a bit of turf out for the stock cars since September 2019.
Yeah. The stock cars are back.
I mean, remember there used to be you could see the turf laid in the corners.
Yeah,
it
was banked up to the side so that the ball would roll back when you kicked into it. I'm also told that Paul Loughlin hated playing at Bramley because as a goal kicker they had the narrowest post in the league and the pitch markings were fine from the halfway line to the 22, but from the 22 to the try line was nearer 30.
Paul Loughlin at Bramley?
Yeah, kicked some goals at Bramley.
Did he?
Can we bring back Hunslet's American football style posts as well?
Well, they were deemed illegal.
Well, there you go, see. So,
when would Paul Loughlin have played at Bramley?
He might have coming through.
John Player.
Oh, well,
they
coming through.
They have reserve grade.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah.
Remember reserve grade?
Went
the way of a wide pitch at Odsal.
I read about it in a book about winter rugby league.
In my brief time working at a Super League club, I did an interview about reserve grade rugby league and then it all got scrapped.
So what do we make of Wigan?
Wigan in crisis, obviously.
They're still joint top of the league, aren't they? It was their first defeat of the season, but should Adrian Lamb be concerned with the manner in which his team capitulated, or is that just the way of things now in rugby league, that you can get heavily beaten one week and come back and win the next?
Well, according to, and this is the Merseyside Police Chief Inspector on Twitter.
What did he play for Wigan on?
No, he said it was one of the worst Wigan performances he's ever seen in his many years supporting the club.
Will he be arresting Adrian Lamb on a charge
this is just
bringing the game
shown,
into disrepute?
Wigan are just not good enough to beat against good sides, despite having won 7 in a row before that.
And got to the grand final last year and won by a drop.
4 times punches to the head equals yellow card. Laughing, smiley, laughing, smiley, laughing, smiley.
Doom and gloom.
Good old the police there with their thoughts on the Wigan. They had won 7 in a row. Well, they were great in that 7. I don't know, but they had won 7 in a row.
Well, he kept saying
ugly
wins.
In Super League, sorry.
Yeah. But should there be a concern? Will George Williams solve it?
Well, it depends if they're bad the week after next. Because they're not back in the Challenge Cup, despite the fact some people think they are, but they're not. So.
Now they've got Huddersfield next, which will be
well, they are rubbish, because I've seen them. They're terrible.
So what went wrong with on there?
You only scored as your last game. I was in the crowd, so that was obviously the main difference. Maybe Wakefield are like...
did you pay?
I did pay.
Oh.
£25 to stand in that wonderful...
You paid 20...
For a concessionary ticket, £20 English.
Wow.
20 of your finest.
I mean, looking at the score, that must have been value for money.
It's worth every penny.
Value for money.
Oh, dearie me.
Did you manage to find a bit of the terrace that was complete in its...
I did say to my nephew, some of this paint on this thing was probably here when my grandma came to watch him. No, we were good. And Huddersfield were not so good. The process did not work for the Giants.
But does it help if you've got your best players out there on a regular basis? Because it seems that all the teams that have won this week have had access to, or won heavily this week, have had access to their better players.
Maybe it helped for Wakefield as well. And this will be bizarre because obviously the fans online for the last 14 months have been doom and gloom and Chester out. And obviously it's all down to Andy Last and Willie poaching. It's nothing to do with Chris Chester. He's rubbish still. And Liam Kane scored that try in the corner. He's still rubbish.
He won't have signed Mason Lee.
Nah.
Who was man of the match.
But maybe it's the fact having fans back. Because, 2 home games, 2 home wins.
And why is he called Lino anyway? Surely I'll be captive for this, obviously, but he should be.
This is why we haven't had him in.
Should be Lino.
We were just good. So, because I was on the terraces, I could, shout abuse at Robert Hicks and stuff.
Which, of course, you wouldn't do.
No.
Friend of the show.
Everyone's shouting 6 again all the time. Dear me.
Have you worked out what it's been given for yet?
Nah. I ain't got a clue. Especially when you're not on the terraces and you're like miles away from where you were. It was good. Good performance from 1 to 13 to please our friend in the paper and the subs. I don't know if Fafita's contracts are up at the end of the season, but he was really good when he came off the bench for 20 minutes.
And does it show that when you put players around Joe Westerman, who clearly has been one of the outstanding performers this year, that will take the pressure off him, like Jacob Miller and Mason Lino, who's taken, 8 games to understand what Super League is all about, which is nothing in the course of a career, that actually that's when things start to work for you.
Catalans, I'll be hoping his knee injury's not too bad if he goes there next year. He did go off in the second half, but we won by that point.
Well, according to Mr. Chester, that was purely because it was managing his game time. He's played a lot recently, and they want to look after him.
I did enjoy Eddie Matty. He's a proper. Who did I describe as an old-fashioned second rower the other week? I think it was Amy Staveley, wasn't it, who leads women? He's just an old-fashioned forward, just does the yards.
Well, I think...
And my nephew thought he was about 35.
No nonsense.
I think Luke Yates is, and that's probably what Huddersfield missed yesterday, that he was out. And I think if every team has a guy that just goes around and make a minimum of 50 tackles, never mind how often they take the ball up, then there's something that you can lock into the way you're going to play. If that guy is not there, it leaves a bigger hole than just one bloke being missing.
I was out over Old Trafford way on Friday night after day 2 of the Roses match, and I'd never met him before, but a friend of a friend who I was acquainted with on the night was a massive Wigan fan, but he said never watched Wigan since Super League started. So that was it. Never watched. But of course, he was a great fan of the great sides of the late 80s and early 90s, and he was Ian Potter. What a player. Ellie Hamley and all the rest of it, great, peripheral floss. Ian Potter, he was your man. He tackling machine. And I said to him, back in the day on the terraces at Headingley, Roy Powell. Yeah?
Yeah.
And I suppose...
if you don't have that ingredient...
What I'm pointing towards out of all of that is that in the modern sense, somebody like an Eddie Batty might fit that sort of a bill.
Absolutely. In the modern sense, without that guy doing that graft, like Dean Hadley did for Hull KR.
Yeah. Like Matty Ashurst has done for the last few years. And I didn't see what his dangerous throw was. That's got him a 2-match ban or whatever it was. So.
When those players are missing, it leaves sometimes a bigger hole than a half-back.
Everyone was good. What can you say? Huddersfield, probably not helped by the fact that Darnell McIntosh was playing at full-back, because he's obviously a very good winger. He's got number 5 on his shirt, so he's a winger. I've seen him score all those tries. Not helped by all of us in the North Stand when someone kicked the ball at him going, oh, and then he dropped it, which was hilarious, because that's always funny and never will not be funny.
So Huddersfield recalled Ollie Ashelbot from Wakefield, but didn't play him against Wakefield, and the player they put in at full-back didn't have a great game.
And their other full-back, Ashton Golding, who I've heard of, international player, who's at Bradford.
Yeah, getting his fitness.
He scored a try.
He
was on Twitter.
And he must have done.
Jamaican International. I'm hoping to speak to somebody with regard to Jamaica for a magazine called 4020.
I thought you were going to promote your own
pretty
podcast.
soon. I've been on the blower trying to get Jason Robinson to do a piece.
I've heard of it.
At the moment, I wouldn't want to build your hopes up too much, but watch this space.
I don't know if there's much more I can say about Wakefield versus Huddersfield, other than we were really good.
First half, you must have been outstanding. 30-0 up at half time. That is some performance.
Their 2 tries at the end were just defended really well all game. I think that's the thing that the coach will take out of it more than anything. The which was the try that was really, I think it was Kay's second try was the one that went from
that was
Kershaw from one wing at the start
Yes.
on his own line to Kate. That was a superb try.
Is that the one with the flying photograph in?
No, that was the first try.
First one.
But that was a superb.
So if we look at the bottom of the table for a minute, and we assume that Hull KR's victory, which gives them the same number of wins as they had last year, possibly moves them out of the prospect of relegation. And having watched that game, I would say that they are on a very much an upward curve at the moment. If we say Wakefield are now hitting what is more representative of their form than, and I think you said it, their early fixtures were not kind to them at the beginning of this season, and they're now entering a period where they can put a run together. And maybe you saw yesterday the importance of confidence as well.
I forgot we're playing on Sunday.
Playing league.
I might have to go to that, might I?
Well, I think what you're building up to in a very loose sense here is that Salford and Lee are in
and
deep,
we look at
deep.
are we looking at Salford and Lee?
I said to my nephew, because he was wanting to know what the scores were elsewhere, and I said Hull KR are beating Lee, and he was like, "Oh, well, we don't want Hull KR to win because we want to catch them." And I was saying, "No, we want them to win because we want to get further away from Lee, because we're not going to get in the top 5 or 6 or whatever it is, because it don't matter about that. Just get away from the bottom. That's all that matters." So if we win again on.
So if you beat Lee this weekend,
which if we don't beat Lee, then we're back to square one, and you ask the same questions: why are we so crap again?
but you would think that you would, and again, having seen Lee yesterday, they cannot put an 80-minute performance together, and that may not be their fault, because again, when you're the last team in, you haven't got the money. Recruitment is, obviously tempered by who is available in the market.
You can't
at the
bring
time.
players through from your academy because you haven't got one.
You didn't really play the year before to give you the springboard on which to develop. It's been more along the lines of you were deemed to be the best option to come into that division on paper. You were prepared to accept less money because your owner was generously going to make up the difference. There are a couple of league players who clearly can play, but across the board, they're going to struggle.
Well, just that there are levels within a level, aren't there? It's a Super League, but within that league, there are definitely at least 2, if not 3, different levels of quality in terms of squads. And putting it bluntly, they're in the bottom third in that respect, in terms of what they can put out there on the pitch. They'll win some games. I'm sure they'll put a few performances together, and I can see them giving the frighteners to the other 3 or 4 teams above them in that respect, and they'll be targeting those games like teams do.
Which you would have thought yesterday would have been
yes,
one of those
games.
Yeah, and the trouble was, again, Hull KR absolutely dominated the first 15-20 minutes, but because Jordan Abdul didn't kick any of the goals, 2 of which were out on the touchline, Lee scored twice with the only 2 attacks that they had and were suddenly level. But the worry for me will be every second half this year, where Lee have been competitive for the first 40 minutes, they've fallen away for the second 40.
Yeah.
And in their spine, clearly Ryan Briley does offer something, and Liam Hood is a very good player, but they are really going to struggle.
Meanwhile, this year. Jordan Abdul, my Hull KR friend Wilkie, if you watch him, Wilkie, who watches them religiously every week, he's telling me that Jordan Abdul...
Was he back in the ground?
He's didn't mention that, but he's telling me Jordan Abdul is definitely been improved this year. What he sees, the finished product.
Man of the match again yesterday.
And he's been the skillful player for some time, hasn't it? But I don't know about the consistency of his performances, which maybe is why we've not really talked about him in these terms up until now. But
I think what helped, again, watching them yesterday, was they're now starting to go forward against teams. Because the rules have changed slightly, the likes of a Matt Parcell and Jez Litton is a really important partnership. Speed is vital to both of them. If they get their pack going forward and can work off the back of that, Abdul has time and space. Also, alongside him, he's got Rowan Milnes, who's developing into a really good player. And they know that on the outside, they've got a proven finisher in Ryan Hall, who again joint top of the try scoring league after 8 rounds, 11 tries. Yeah. And what you know is if you create even a half a chance, you've got a guy there that's going to finish it. He Again, didn't have to do a lot for any of his tries, but if you're a halfback and you know you can get it to that side and give that guy a little bit of space to work in, he's going to give you 4 points. Yeah. That's massive.
And it doesn't take long, does it, with supporters in any sport for a player to become a bit of a folk hero. You know, you think for guys like us watching Leeds back in the day, somebody like Craig Izzard turns up from Australia, he barnstormed through about 3 tackles and suddenly he was a megastar, and he did it for whatever, how many weeks it was.
Yeah, it was only about 50.
Then he was back on the plane to Australia, and you'll be able to name your Wakey players who've done it over the years.
Michael Korkidis, sadly.
There you go.
A bit of a difference between those two.
Listen, I'm not saying Ryan Hall's disappearing back off on a plane anyway, because he's not, but he's clearly there, he's on a contract. But what I mean is, you know, he's made his name for another club and been a genuine bona fide, you know, one of the greats in his position for another club. And then he's now becoming a folk hero somewhere else.
Well, 11 tries then, so far this season. And I kind of joked earlier in the year when he scored a hat-trick, I was going to be in the England squad for the World Cup. Do you almost have him in there as a kind of... He's got the experience. He can play a role in a squad. Not as a starter, but should Ryan Hall be in the England squad for the World Cup?
If he is in the same form at the end of the season as he is now, yes, because I think you're right that maybe if we were to pick our wingers after the first couple of rounds, it would have been Tommy Makinson and Tom Johnson, and that gives you a real speed threat. What Ryan Hall gives you is almost the antidote to that. You need to get out of your quarter. You need a guy who you're going to give the ball to relatively close to the line. You need a finish. He's your man. So to get both of those options in Sean Wayne's squad, absolutely, and banged on about this for 2 or 3 weeks now, but Tom Davis would be in there for me as well, because if Johnson isn't going to be fit, and let's hope he is, because he's one of the most exciting players you would pay to go on and watch. Those are the guys you want out there, and I do think Makinson, on his day, is the best that we've got. He's not the Golden Boot for nothing, but if you can put Ryan Hall in there with all his experience, and if you need to play in a game where you think power is going to trump speed, you look at the opposition and they're 8'12", then Hall's your man.
It'd be a remarkable story, though, wouldn't it? That as well. You know, what a renaissance, if you like, because barring going to Australia and being a raging, roaring success, and then you would have expected that if it had prolonged things in that sense, yes, we'd have still been talking about him in these terms. But to go away, he had the injury issues, and just like so many players who do, you feel like it was a bit of a damp squib overall. And I say, I do take into account that he suffered with injuries over there, and then you think, the typical stuff that you get when a player comes back at that age. Is he taking the money? He's gone to Hull KR with his old boss Tony Smith, Danny Maggs. Easy option, but clearly not. He's clearly, he's got it all still. And he might just, sorry Ryan, might just lack a little bit of the toe that he once had, but he's still got the power. He's got the brain, and he's got all that experience.
Brilliantly. I think the other thing about it is it's to his eternal credit that he came back from. He tried in Australia at a late age, so it's doubly difficult. Yeah. He then goes into a team that already has 2 of the best established wingers in the competition, and try and break into that if you were fit would have been difficult. Yeah. But he took that challenge, which is to his eternal credit. He then got injured, played something like 8 games over 2 years, which again no fault of his own. Comes back and performs at a level he was when he left. I mean, that is to his absolute credit.
I mean, things of man Headingley nights when he's squeezing in the corner and it was WBW and all that, and of course, well, the Huddersfield try that night.
I knew he was going to get mentioned.
Was I there for that? I can't remember it.
You broke the ISDN. Took us off the
I got so excited that the ISDN kit, it over-modded, didn't it? So there's actually no commentary on the point that Ryan Hall puts the ball down in the corner, because I think Craig Murdoch was doing that game with me, and we just said, or rather, to be precise, I just said before that last play or whatever, never rule Leeds out. There's one player left in this game. I could just see a situation where Danny Maguire bangs it down the wing and Ryan Hall's run out, and it actually happened. So I got so excited about that we never actually got the commentary. Sorry.
But in fact, Eddie Hemmings just says, Ryan Hall, and they go, and all that. So it's all the same. Yeah.
Yeah, I should have just shouted that, shouldn't I?
Andy Bibby, speaking of players who should be in the England squad, he says, Gareth Widdop should be reconsidered by Sean Wendt, who now, of course, has been put up to play for the Combined Nations All-Star 13 thing by Sky.
Again, Warrington becoming even more impressive by the week because they seem to have got the fit right and the style right. I think, you know, I still think there is a case for saying that perhaps, you know, Josh Hewlett is quite unlucky not to retain his place because I thought he was making strides, but Widdop is now dominating games. Whether he and Blake Austin have decided who's going to do what, and that's now working because they're both quality players. But sometimes you can have an overabundance of guys that want to dominate. Widdop seems to be just enjoying his role. Again, far too good in the second half for Salford. Makes the cup semi-final this week really interesting because clearly Warrington are massive favourites now against a Castleford team who I'm trying to think of a word other than woeful in their last performance. I think that's fair.
What's the opposite of tigerish?
Kittenesque. But I think Widdop again does offer you versatility. He clearly has played in the most intense competition in the world. He is someone who can dominate a game. What the issue becomes George Williams, you know, because if he doesn't sign soon for a major team leading into the World Cup, how can you pick him? Because you certainly can't use form as a guideline. And whilst it's great that, you know, Newcastle are offering him a lifeline, Lee would take him tomorrow if he would sign for them, he needs to be playing with the best players in form leading into a World Cup. If he isn't going to be available or able to do that, Widdop is a very good option.
Ryan Hall could play for the Combined Nations All-Star thing. Although Hull KR probably won't want that because they want him fresh young. It's credit to Ryan Hall because there are many players of his age who've gone to a club like Hull KR and have just dogged it. And he's not that kind of player.
But I think, again, we need to credit Tony Smith because I think he realised that if you're going to bring somebody like Ryan Hall in, you've got to play to Ryan Hall's strengths. So, you know, the rest of his team are ensuring that Ryan Hall can do what Ryan Hall does best. If it was possibly the Hull KR team from maybe a couple of years ago, Ryan would have been getting cold on the wing other than this weekend when it was hot.
Ignominy. Castleford, I think, is a word.
Were people really going home at half-time?
Yes.
But, I mean, do you remember, we went across...
It's only taken them 14 months to get in, but they couldn't wait to get out.
We went to Weldon Road, whatever, what's it called these days?
The jungle.
Menderhose jungle still. We went there, and I think I'm right in saying, was it the week after Leeds had won the World Club Challenge? And got beaten, and Cass were claiming that they were world champions because they'd beaten Leeds.
In the Scotland one.
Yeah, I've got no axe to grind with Cass whatsoever. In fact, loads of my family are actually originally from Glasshoughton. That's a bit like saying.
So some of my family are from Featherstone. Yeah,
that's a bit like saying I'm not sexist. I've got a wife, isn't it? But you know what I'm saying. The family Doidge actually is from that generation. I once turned up at Featherstone to report on a match for Radio Leeds years ago, and the bloke on the turnstiles said, as I was showing my media pass, said, "Oh, bet you're related to me." So I said,
I mean, I was going to say it's Featherstone, but I thought no.
I said, "Who are you?" So he told me his first name and obviously his surname. And it turned out we were right.
There you go.
We were related. Happened. Didn't do any good for Featherstone in match though. All my reporting.
I think there are some issues at Cass, which obviously is not the greatest statement you're going to hear on the show tonight. But it's not just that they lost one game. And Darryl Powell did take a calculated risk by resting a couple of key players, not least Jake Truman. But it's the fact that now it's 3 games, and cumulatively those 3 games start to tell a bit of a story. And now everything is pinned on that 80 minutes next week, which I don't think it is a foregone conclusion just because there's effectively a 120-point turnaround between what the two teams did this week, and as you mentioned, you're only as good as your last game. Darrell is desperate to deliver a trophy before he leaves Castleford. I don't think they're going to win the grand final this year, even though he quite rightly pointed to a game from 2017 where Leeds suffered exactly the same ignominy at Weldon Road and then did go on and beat Castleford in the grand final. I'm not looking at a Castleford team having some component parts that were the same as some of those who were playing in a Leeds shirt that day, witness Danny Maguire and Rob Burrow, who, when you get to a final, know how to win a final. I'm not sure Cass have got that to fall back on. They had all of these other games that they'd played in and knew exactly how to play them. But I do so I think that Castleford's season in some respects comes down to this 80 minutes next week. Then you add in it's Warrington and where Darrell is going, and you know, almost the pressure's off them this week. And he will have some players back that playing keepers. I'm pretty sure Niall Evalds could have played this week and he will be back. You know, clearly Truman will be back. Yeah. There's a couple of others that I think he knows that will be playing this week. But what happens if Cass can't win on Saturday? And again, what we don't want to do is put any coach under any degree, but questions will be asked.
Right. Andy's asked the question, so you don't have to. He says, if Cass get a drubbing, will Powell be under pressure to walk? I can't see him lasting out the season as coach.
I don't think he'll be under pressure to walk, but I think his personal pride might see him walk, bearing in mind that Castleford have already appointed his successor, and his successor could start the following week. I think, Darrell was clearly hurt on Friday night with the way his team played. It had nothing to do with who it was against or the fact that some of the fans booed the team off at half-time and full-time, which in some respects is understandable. When you haven't been there for 14 months, yes, you pay your money, you take your choice, but people do have very short-term memory. And it's always easier to boo sometimes than find a positive to cheer, or as my mum would have said, say, if you're not nice to say, say nout. Except she wouldn't have used now because she was from down south. I don't know. I think that's a very fair question from Andy, and depending on the manner of the defeat, if that were to happen, and I'm not saying it will, yes, I think he would consider it, because they were absolutely awful on Friday night. I have never seen three players who play in spine positions taken off within 30 minutes of the start of a game.
I don't see them in a semi-final producing a performance like that. I know you're going to throw a grand final against Leeds at me, and where they dominated the table that year, and then on the night they offered very little in the big game, and this is a big game. But I can't see them coming up with something. It was a rude performance, wasn't it, against Leeds last weekend? So no, I think they're going to. They need two magical matches here to win this. Not necessarily magical, but two very good performances out of their season, and they're going to be heroes for a long, long time.
And you look at the two games that they've won, which have both been by golden point extra time in this competition, and there is some resilience about them. If Paul McShane hadn't played on Friday night, and he was moved to the right-hand side to defend in the end, because I think they were trying to protect him for next week, but they had to keep him out there. It could have been anything. It really could have been. I admire every player that has ever played this game, but the defence on the right-hand side of Cass on Friday night was a nightmare for a coach, because every time Luke Gale switched the ball to that side, and again, you talk about the best players coming back into a team makes such a difference. Just having Richie Myler to play outside of him gave Leeds a completely different dimension. Once they'd realised there was a weakness on the right, they exploited that in the first half. I think at least 5 of the tries must have come down that side. To keep talking about how poor Castleford were is to detract from the fact that Leeds did score 11 tries, and a lot of them were very, very well created.
Was it the same at Leeds then? It's all down to Sean Long then. Richard Agar gets no credit, and it's all down to Leeds.
Sean Long's been taking some hammer from Leeds fans.
Because obviously I don't follow Leeds fans.
When they had no key, several key players missing in the last 20, in the final 20 metres. what are they creating? What's Sean? Come on, Sean, pull your finger out and get it sorted out. What's going on? It's down to him. So does he take all the plaudits following Friday night?
I think again, going back to Wakefield, confidence is important. So I think that, even if you jag a win, that feeling in the dressing room that you've got to win, the following week you take that. You then say, well, and we've said it all year, that if your players are injured in the key spine positions in depth, it's very hard to compensate for that. So, you can have a centre out where you can stick a second rower in there and it'll work for a short. But you take both of your half-backs out and 2 or 3 down that pecking order, there's not a lot you can do. As soon as Richie Myler and starting to be almost back to his full fitness, Luke Gale are playing, very hard then for defenders to know which side it's going to go, to stop that ability to move the ball wide. Jack Broadbent was fantastic on Friday night, but he was getting some real quality ball.
Yeah.
Going back to Cass, I think McShane, Liam Watts, with the greatest respect, looked like he was saving himself for next week. Yeah. You look at his stats, so I don't need to judge him, but he didn't have many carries and he didn't make many metres, and he was trying to offload the ball virtually every time he had it in contact, which again, when your team is being beaten, it's probably not what your coach wants you to do. But I think Cass have got enough players to trouble Warrington. I would just say that the trough that they're in at the moment, if they go behind by 2 or 3 scores early on, that's going to be hard. Yeah. The worry for Cass would be, at the moment, Danny Richardson, who was one of the 3 players taken off, was defending on the right, came back on at the end, but clearly, he needs players around him that can raise his head up, and for him to do what he needs to do, he really was exposed on Friday.
Yeah, Cass need one of them, don't they, where they get an early try just to boost everybody. We can do this. That belief is there.
Or first set of 6, really be physically intimidated.
Or not necessarily even get an early try, but go through the first 20 and maybe not conceded, and then you start to grow, don't you, as well? If there is any self doubt, Warrington very good side, but I don't see Cass losing that game if that happens by too many points. I think they'll be scrapping till the death, and good luck to them. They might be good enough to win it. The spectre of Saints or Hull FC, dual winners in recent years.
People have been on Facebook saying, I'm studying the crossword. I think there is a crossword in League Express. That'd be very interesting. What I've actually been trying to work out is how many points Wakefield need to win by to go above Leeds in the table this weekend. Now I've realised Wakefield are playing on Sunday, because I didn't realise we were. Because we're on. Obviously, if we win, we're level on win percentage, but not points difference percentage. Because currently we're on 75.13 and Leeds are on 110.29.
Which they weren't before. I mean, Leeds have scored 90 points in 7 games and then 16 in 1 game, which has made a massive difference.
Just need to win. That's all it is, finishing above Leeds, even though we'd have played a game more. That's all that matters. So
you'll be viewing it as a penalty kick, won't you, after the results of the weekend?
Yeah, I mean, if I come on here and say, you win by 50, then Lee will win, or 1-0 or something. We'll find out on Sunday. Hopefully it's still sunny. Saints versus Hull, which was on TV.
The dress rehearsal.
I'm trying to remember much about this game. It just seemed to be one of those games that was on TV, wasn't it?
Saints were absolutely dominant from the beginning.
Lovely try from Welsby. He seemed to score the same try twice in the game, and as you say, they were dominant.
I think
it was a typical Saints performance.
Clearly, the bookies' odds, even in the paper today, for those interested in such things. Saints favourites 11-8, Warrington 11-4, so nothing between those two, and Hull and Cass outsiders at 3 and 5-1 respectively. I wouldn't read too much into that Hull performance last week, because in the previous round, Hull played well but lost at Wigan, and everybody said, when the cup tie comes around, Wigan know what they've got to do. And that particular cup match, Hull were absolutely dominant. So I think there is something about this whole team at the moment that there's a physicality that St Helens got caught out by in Catalan in the one game that they've lost this year. I think Hull and Brett Hodgson know how to approach this game. I'm pretty sure they'll have virtually everybody available who they want and need. They'll keep it conservative, I reckon. They won't allow Saints to get into a points fest with them, because I think, again, Saints' strike players will probably benefit from that. But if you can hold them tight down the middle, and you've got the likes of Sneed kicking you into the positions of the field where you need to be, then that's the style of play that I wouldn't say Saints have struggled with, but they've found the most difficult to overcome in recent years.
Yeah.
So that to me is a really intriguing game, of which this week's result means absolutely nothing.
I'm just looking through. Did they rest a few? Hull FC.
I don't think so. Being a Cass at the time and running out of notepaper.
Jake Collin, Maher Fanua, Carlos Tuivasa, Josh Griffin, Adam Swift, Josh Reynolds, Mark Sneak, Danny Houghton.
It didn't feel like it, did it?
No.
I think it was just one of those, they were off this week. Saints were on. Saints needed to be, because they had to hit back after losing in Catalan. But this week, I reckon those teams start off level.
So that makes Hull FC the bet then. And Cass, looking at the league table, I know they're on a bad trot, but in that other semi, there are, whatever it is, how many league? 5 wins for Warrington and 4 for Cass so far from their 8 games. 3 points in it with Warrington's draw.
Well, it's only a couple of weeks ago. Warrington weren't great, were they? So
Castle for the 5-1 to win that game. That's
to win the cup.
To win the cup.
Oh, to win the cup. Sorry, I thought you meant to win the match.
I did tip Castle to do a men's and women's cup double a few weeks ago. So obviously that's gone well down the wayside. But talk about that in a bit. But intriguing semi-finals.
I definitely worth watching. In fact, a day of rugby league to really look forward to. If you can't get there, because obviously crowds are limited, ticket sales are limited, then it's all on our national terrestrial broadcaster. Get your tea and buns for 11:15. I think the women's game kicks off, and have a whole day of rugby league.
I mean, I would have.
Can I tell you about another one worth watching? Can I plug my little Sporting Lives?
Of course.
Rugby League. I've recorded a Sporting Lives, folks. Another one. I do a podcast called Sporting Lives with Jonathan Doidge. You'll find it on YouTube. It's got Franny Cummins on there, Luke Gale, Stuart Cummins last year, did a bit with him, etc. So there's a few rugby leaguers up there, other sports as well. But I recorded one last week, a new one with Richard Mathers.
Friend of the show.
Yes, I know, because I watched him. And he's a great, cracking lad Richard is. And obviously he's had issues recently because he got flattened on his bike. He tells you all about that in the podcast, but he also tells you the story of the Castleford years with Ian Millwall. What went on there?
When he was saved by Wakefield.
I don't want to spoil it by telling you exactly what it says on here, because I want you to go and watch it. But but the Castleford years, he talked some great stuff about Tony Smith, what he brought to his game as a coach. He talks about when he played at Wakey and the great sort of spirit that was engendered there. They were up against it, sort of thing, and
decision to go to the Gold Coast Titans.
Yeah, all that, and how he couldn't trust his body. He didn't trust his body. He didn't have any confidence in it when he played at Wigan. So there's loads of that stuff from a variety of clubs. Please, when it comes out, do go watch it. It's not yet on there because I've got to edit it yet, and I've been doing the Roses match for the last 4 days at Old Trafford.
Just imagine how bad life was at Castleford. They went to Wakefield, who were just on the verge of a financial collapse. One of many, but never went out of business. I don't know we managed that somehow.
He's okay, by the way.
Good.
You'll be delighted to know that, because it sounded like a really nasty accident, I've got to say.
Mm-hmm. Salford, you sort of briefly...
I'm going to say that's the only game I haven't really...
Well, you
he
briefly...
didn't play there, so he didn't tell me
No, that's the only one that he didn't play. You briefly mentioned that you think relegation now might be down to 2 clubs. I've just put those words in your mouth, by the way. But we're a third of the way through the season. I think
just to alienate the Greater Manchester conurbation.
That Lee and Salford may well be 2 teams that could be struggling this year.
It's an alarming decline, isn't it, at Salford?
Is it understandable?
It's
though?
almost cliff-like, isn't it, stepping off.
Now you see, I
compared to where they've been in the last 2 or 3 seasons.
I floated a theory to someone that it might be the coach, and they said, no, it's not the coach, it's the players. And I trust their judgment more than mine.
But is it, again, with the greatest respect to those players, the quality of player? Because when they've lost the likes, and I go back to him, we talked about him earlier, Luke Yates is a key guy in holding that team together on the field. As you say, Niall Evans was the outlet at the back, so, if you've got Kevin Brown looking for somebody who's going to finish something off, or you're looking for someone who's going to make that last-ditch try-saving tackle, Evans is as good as anybody, and again... If he was able to maintain his very best form, you'd think about Is he going to be an England possible?
Yeah.
He has been that good. When you lose that calibre and quality of player, is that going to have more effect? You know, Joey Lussick, how good was he for the small amount of time that he was there? You're talking about key players in key positions, the ones that hold the side together that are not there this year, which is not to, again, detract from the guys who are there. I don't think Elijah Taylor's a hooker. I think they were forced to put him in that role. And he's played quite well for them this year since he arrived. Is it just because of the financial situation, the ongoing financial situation at Salford, that they couldn't keep the coach that got them to the 2 finals, and they couldn't keep the players? You know, Josh Jones, when he was at Salford, was absolutely vital. May have had a difficult time when he went to Hull, but under the coach that he was playing at, key to what they started to develop. None of those players are there.
No, they're not. Listen, you know me. You've known me a long time, and you know I'm definitely not a coach sacker. That is not in my makeup. I'm a very patient supporter and always have been. So, you know, I'd like to see a lot more of Richard Marshall in charge of the troops at Salford before I even remotely thought about saying it's got to be the coach, he's on his way. He's not coached in Super League before. Maybe there's a bit of an adjustment from what, you know, for on his part, and then of the squad towards him. Maybe that's what it is, and sometimes it does take longer. I mean, you can remember at Headingley when Brian McDermott took charge, the moans and groans about the style of play from the supporters who'd been used to success already by that point through Brian McLennan and through Tony Smith, and he was playing too flat, wasn't he? It was just, you know, criticism after if they didn't get it right and produce the perfect performance every week. So I'm not saying the Salford squad's, you know, capable of producing the perfect performance every week, but what I'm talking about is some sort of an adjustment in there. And also, you look down the list of players, some of them have been around a few clubs by now. I suppose if you look through other Super League squads, though, to try and have some balance, you know, you've got a bit of that as well. It's starting to feel, oh God, I'm going to get hammered for this, but it's starting to feel more of a journeyman feel to it again than it did for a couple of seasons.
When you're at the bottom and you're having to pick up cast-offs from other clubs, you have to get the right cast-offs. And they might
or even if you're taking players from the Championship who are unproven and haven't played at that level of intensity week in, week out. I think one of the other players that they're really missing this year, which again, hindsight is a wonderful thing because you don't necessarily know you're missing something until you realise what's gone. Mark Flanagan. Because again, if you're looking at the ultimate professional, and sometimes it's not what we see on the pitch, it's the influence they have in the dressing room and at training. And you know, when people like that speak, and you know, he's won grand finals and he's played over in the NRL and he's highly respected, and you know, he's in your team, and you look and you go, we're under a bit of duress here, and Mark does the dirty carry or barks out the right instruction at the right time to get the defensive line back. Those are characters that it's not even as much about their inherent ability, it's the influence they have on all the players around them.
An X factor.
And they're losing, they've lost too much of that, in my opinion, which you can't blame Richard Marshall for.
No.
But you would be concerned, I think, if you were... Salford's next game, I think, is Hull KR. Which again now has huge connotation. Hull KR get 5 wins and 4 ahead of Salford.
Yeah.
You start to say now destiny's out of your own hands. You're looking at 2 games against Lee. You've got to win both of those, and you might be safe. And that's no disrespect to Lee, because I think you're right. As you say, they're going to pick up a win unexpectedly somewhere in the season, because week on week we're not seeing consistent. We're looking at Wigan, who went into this round having won 7 out of 7, getting beaten by close on 50 points. That's not a form line. It's the same with Saints. They went to Catalans, who had been relatively inconsistent in the lead up to that game, and were beaten. So Wakefield, 2 wins now. You'd be backing them. If the season had started these last 2 weeks ago, they'd be up there for a playoff play. So Lee will win a game that they're not expected to win.
Yes.
But is it coming down to it, Salford and Lee, as we approach Yeah, we're over the third way point. To the season.
Leeds end up beating somebody that they're really not expected to beat, who were completely off their guard and complacent on the night.
What's what else?
And then
everyone
will be going, "Oh, Leeds have turned the corner because they're beaten." I don't know, name a club from the top 6, let's say, or maybe mid-table at least, and then it'll suddenly be, these guys can play, turn the corner, and they'll probably lose the next 4. So, but I don't see them getting nil point anyway this season.
No one will finish with 0. Apart from Wigan and Catalans.
So we found a temporary employment for Robert Elster.
I thought they were going to take Arthur Morg's head off at one point.
Arthur Morg, what a talent.
Yeah.
Matthew Laguerre, Arthur Morg.
So I'll turn it around that way. There we go.
I did spell his name wrong on Twitter.
Are we looking at a renaissance of French Rugby League, or is it too early to say that? Toulouse top of the Championship and Catalans joint top, and some. I know people will make comment. Oh, there's only 7 Frenchmen in those two. Is the level of French talent now benefiting from having?
I mean, you say that, but I think Mason Leno's from Stanley, so it's all right.
Stanley near Samoa.
It could be a French Renaissance. Who knows?
Good in a World Cup year.
Better than a French Resistance.
Well, yes, it would be good to. Let's wait and see. Let's hope so.
But does
it matter if the team isn't full of?
No, but what I think is exciting is seeing Arthur Morg.
Yes.
Because not only did he score a fantastic try with wonderful footwork, but a couple of times he broke the line in midfield. And again, if we're talking about players that you're excited to see maybe come to your home ground, Arthur Morg on the team sheet, you now go, great, I want to see him. He reminds me very much of Morgan Escaré when he first broke through at the Dragons.
Yeah, my nephew said when we were walking to the ground yesterday, he doesn't want to see us play against Catalans because we always lose to them. So soon off to see that.
Did you mention Leeds? Oh.
No.
Leeds in big game?
No.
Leeds' 2 wins against Wakefield looking good now.
Yeah,
Got more purchase.
Yeah, so that's the Super League fixture list being corrupt, isn't it? By putting those games from Wakefield with rubbish as opposed to now we're good. Now we've beat you now. We should be above you. I'm going to start a petition and I'm going to send it to everyone and say I'm going to send it to my MP Andrea Jenkins, Mrs Briggs. I'm going to say, oi, everyone, right? You all parliamentary Rugby League committee.
Lobby for the points back.
Well, we want the points back. Get them off Leeds.
Bad news
petition.
For you. The newly elected vice chair of the all-party parliamentary.
Is he a Leeds fan?
Has Wally Lewis arrived yet?
No, he's gone home. Is he a Leeds fan? Bloody Leeds.
Newly elected into the House of Lords.
Is that Lord Kane? Is that?
No.
Oh, it's another one.
Anyway, I can speak from personal experience on Toulouse because, well, not personal. I didn't play for them or against them, but I did an hour league commentary earlier this season on Toulouse against York, and I thought I would see a lot more from York than we saw that day. I was a bit disappointed, I've got to say, in Toulouse. They looked like it felt like a Super League side playing in the Championship, and I know that was just one sample early on, but I did.
They back that up.
Tony Ray was doing the comms with me, and he sort of said, "I think they're going to upset a lot of teams this year."
So, would Toulouse hold their own, as opposed to, or
right now
in
with this
combination
squad
with Lee?
With this squad, I would have said yes. From what I saw that day, it's never that easy to tell, is it, when they're not actually playing against that sort of opposition. But I'd have said that they could hold their own with the bottom couple in Super League at this moment in time, just on that sole performance, seeing a full 80 minutes of them. But I would say that if they were going up, again, they would need to add some quality to that.
Or depth.
Yes, both. If they're going to go up, with a view to making it a long-term proposition. They'd have to go up and go mad, as we've seen so many clubs do over the years, and then run into more financial difficulty. But they could go up and consolidate and build, and it's not. Let's be honest about it, because we usually get, when we're in periods of relegation, we usually get an exodus, and the bottom clubs, the bottom 2, 3 some years, but generally speaking, it's just a couple in it that get cast off. because of that, if they go up and just have got the ability to add a little bit more quality, you could see them consolidating and somebody else getting cast off, and that's that step that they've taken then.
Because I think
to set themselves up.
We spoke last week about the academy debate. We can return to it if people want to this week. I'm not sure there's too much more we can add.
No.
But I think one of the things that has been said by a lot of people that have now sat back and looked at that decision is take out the emotion of the individual clubs that have and haven't. Can you in fact just merely address the academy as an issue? Is it not the whole of the game that you've got to look at? And if you're going to impose supposed standards, don't they have to start at the top and filter down rather than pick a layer in the middle? What would happen if Toulouse did get promoted? Bearing in mind that there was some resistance to Toronto when they won the division, some of the clubs saying just because they don't bring fans, they're not welcome. I think Robert Elster made his position quite clear before he got the promotion to making coffee at half time here. And obviously he was working for some of the senior club executives that were concerned more about the money that they might lose if there were two teams from outside of the area that clearly has an impact on game day revenue. If Toulouse do finish top of the league, if they do win the championship title, is there going to be any resistance, do you think, to them taking up their promotion?
On the basis of what you've just said with previous examples, then yes. I would assume that there will be from some quarters.
Is that an issue that we need to address now and equivocally say
if they are in? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. We need to get these things laid out there in front of us so that we all know where we stand. Surely,
be it Toulouse or Featherstone, who are the unbeaten sides at the top of the championship as we speak, or even the Bradford Bulls and their illegal pitch, whoever it may be. We had a comment on YouTube from Craig. Can someone let James Ford know he's left his tape measure behind at Odsal? He had one of those wheels like Surveyor's wheels.
I'm not seeing Fev played live this year. I was asked actually if I would go to do their game yesterday over at Halifax.
Rather than watching Yorkshire's heroic rear guard.
When I was asked, which admittedly was a little bit, 48 hours notice or whatever, or something like Friday, it looked as though Yorkshire were going to get thrashed by Lancashire, and I might actually be able to get across and do the commentary on Sunday, but we hung around for an extra 24 hours and it looked pretty obvious that it was going to go definitely into Sunday, which was probably cutting it too fine as it turned out. Of course, the cricket ended up going right till 20 minutes before the end of the fourth day yesterday, so it was the right call. So, sorry, to get back to it, I've not seen them play live yet in the flesh this season, but they're clearly producing some good results. That was another good, hard-fought win by all accounts yesterday, and I have seen Halifax play. So Halifax did the game between Halifax and London at the Shave a few weeks ago. And they, I think they're one of those sides that they could upset a few at the top. They're probably not going to be, well, it's looking like the results already are saying they're not going to be quite consistent enough to go all the way, but I think they're going to be good enough to beat some of those top sides, so they could, upset one or two. But from what I've seen, Toulouse that day against York, and the results back that up, and I know they've only conceded 58 points all season.
And they've played 2 games over here.
Yeah, and apart from being a good defensive unit in that respect, they just felt a bit sort of, and I don't want to exaggerate this too much when you think about the team I'm going to compare them with, but think about the Bulls in Super League when they were a great side, when you had the Paul Andersons. It felt like a bit juggernaut-ish. The Toulouse momentum, there was a lot of size, a lot of power, a lot of physique about them. They sort of out-muscled York, I thought, that day. And when you look at the size of the guys and some of the experience they've got, and I'm not taking away from the skills because they've clearly got that as well. They do look.
But we're in the realms again of full-time and part-time.
Yes.
And even though the Toulouse squad isn't all full-time, their overseas players are full-time.
Yeah.
And it would seem to me that as this division goes on, that's going to be a factor. It's a long, tough season. If we do get a spell of good weather, it's really sapping energy-wise. If you're together most of the core of your team is together most of the week, that's going to become more of an advantage rather than less of one, I would think.
So that was a game York lost. I mean, York fans watching might want to tell us what they feel like they've been playing like as a rule this season, but 4-4 from 8, and I thought they'd have been doing better than that, I've got to say.
I do think that York are going about things the right way, in that there's consolidation. That in some respects, in terms of league position last year, bearing in mind that it was almost impossible to have a competition with complete integrity because of everything everybody was going through. To finish third was an amazing achievement, but I'm not sure, having just been promoted to that division, it was a true reflection of what you've got to do to build and sustain. So I think anything round about top 4, if that's where they end up, 5th, 6th, that would still be acceptable, because the club is clearly building. They're in their new stadium, which is at the moment as unfamiliar to them as it is to the opposition. They're getting a better quality of player attracted to the club. So I think they're building in the right way. But I would think that if we asked John Flackman, they wouldn't have pretensions of being in Super League next year. I think Toulouse do. I think Bradford would like to be in there sooner rather than later, and the longer that they're not, the harder that task becomes.
Yeah.
I think the issue of no dual registration this year is going to have an issue for some clubs as well, because in the past, when the injuries have hit, they've been able to call on their partner club to send some players down. It's not going to be easy to do that this year. It's 2-week loans, and you can't get the player back in that. Unless once the restrictions are all listed in June, we go back to scrums and dual reg and whatever we might go back to.
Winter?
And the academies.
Yeah, actually having teams on side at the play. No, they are. They don't have to line up with the referee. They don't. As long as they're 10 metres away, the referee can stand 11 or 12 metres to get a better view of the defensive line if he wants
players
to.
Punching each other.
But what I'm saying is that dual reg issue, which clearly Featherstone have, one of the teams that have benefited from in the past. They're not going to have that this year, as far as we know.
What about the Broncos?
They are full time. They've got a very young squad. Got a lot of young players. I suspect their move to Wimbledon, which may not now happen until either much later this year or into next year, is their turning point, their salvation. The fact that they have got an academy and don't want to get too bogged down in who should or shouldn't have done, whether it was the right decision or not. But I think what we can say is, from Mr. Rimmer's being on Sky on Thursday night, PR disaster. I don't think that's telling tales out of school. Well, he may well have had the facts at his disposal, but unfortunately, the case that he made.
Who's had the worst week in communications, the Rugby Football League or the Canberra Raiders? Because both have had an absolute Joe Cocker, as they would say.
Which again only highlighted to me the need for somebody to be a spokesperson for the sport, which we've said for years that we don't have. And Ralph may well be very, very good at some of the things he does in terms of the logistics of organising competitions, going to government and getting funds out of them, but clearly he is not a public speaker.
I mean, I did
with
agree.
The greatest respect.
I agree with his,
and that's really tough.
Yeah, I agree with his thing about kids cry. He's right, and we shouldn't. We put far too much into this dream thing, and people are putting far too much emotion into this issue. But the problem is, you can't say that publicly because people are too invested in the emotion.
Absolutely, and I think
sadly
you hold open the prospect of a dream, but you administer in reality, and those are two very different things. So I think, in terms of purely a PR exercise, backfired on the RFL. But in terms of London, there are more kids in their first team at the moment in a full-time environment. My worry in the short term would be Jamie Langley leaving, because I think he's been responsible for quite a lot of that. Once the talent's identified, he's been a really important conduit in bringing them through and getting them up to the standard. Yeah. I mean, he's now going to Sale, which I think, now again, what does that tell you about our systems and money that we've got on offer in the right places and where that money should go to? Can we really afford all of our bright young coaches to be leaving the game? Probably not.
We've got no money, haven't we?
No. Well, we're 25. We are. The whole thing about this academy debate that wasn't talked about enough was the game as a whole. It has 25% less income this year.
Yeah.
But when you lose talent like, Paul Deacon, Martin Gleeson, now Jamie Langley to rugby union, I would say that's a concern.
It's not the end, is it? It's not the end.
No.
It will continue. Unfortunately, you don't have to be anywhere near the top in that sport to earn.
So for London, I would say being full-time, attracting good local talent, having a talent development system, moving to a new ground which offers them corporate, establishing an identity which they haven't had, they didn't even have at the time we wrote a book about the first 10 years of Super League, when in those early years they were as good as they've ever been. Remembering some of the days when they got to Challenge Cup semi-finals, then finished second in the league, got to a Challenge Cup final, played in that the ill-fated World Club Championship. But how many nights could we really celebrate? Well, one of those was, two of them actually were down in London. One that they won and one that they lost. They had crowds of around 6,000 or 7,000, which if you look at most Super League clubs at the moment, they would be pleased with. But we as a sport have never found a way of capitalising on that. I think there are the germination of something there to build on, but not this year. This is a year that if they keep their heads above water, finish in the top half of the table, maybe bottom end of the playoffs, that's the best Danny Ward could hope for.
Are Batley outperforming where you thought they might be?
I think we always say they are, aren't they? They always...
Punching above the weight?
Yeah, they always seem to do so, don't they? Another win for them yesterday against bottom of the table Swinton. Condolences to Mr. Kellner.
His big games next week. 80 minutes from Wembley.
Yeah.
80 minutes from Wembley.
He's thinking of going.
To York?
Yeah. To watch his
nice
boys.
Bijou Boutique Stadium.
Is Martin?
Swinton Lions celebrity supporter, I think, isn't he?
And then he might be able to write something in the magazine about a rugby league game he's seen.
Well, that's the problem. You see, I'm starting to copy his lead at the moment by not writing about rugby league. York versus Swinton. Yeah, Batley won 26-12, trailing at half time. I assume they were going up the hill in the first half or something. I don't know.
Martin Kellner, many years ago, when he used to present on Radio Leeds regularly, one of my first assignments when I went there.
These are very nice, by the way. Not the way they come out of it.
Like you do.
Like knock-off biscoffs. Yeah.
Looking for your first opportunity in media and all the rest of it. I used to go in and do casual shifts and used to produce the night sport show, I think it was. I think he was on there presenting one evening a week, and there was always a quiz on. So either he or, might have been Derm Tanner, who was a sports editor at the time, said, Doidge, can you write some questions for Martin's quiz? And I remember I wasn't in the following week when he asked these questions. I was at home listening to the show to see what he made of them. I can't remember any of the questions. I just remember I thought I'd better make them, not ridiculously easy, but clearly they were maybe a little bit too taxing.
Never overestimate the audience.
And he went,
not you.
It was just completely. It just ruined me. He didn't know it was me. He just said, "Who's written these questions? Who would know the answer to that?" I was sitting there dying behind the sofa at home with my first production of a night sport show. Thanks, Martin.
Prime time in Malaysia. Well, good luck to Martin Kellner Swinton against York. Although they
free on our league, I believe.
Yes, it is, fans. Isn't it? Yeah. So if I don't go to watch Wakefield on Sunday, I can watch it.
Both games are, I believe.
Well, you see, now here's the thing. I need to watch that second game, don't I? Because I thought I might be the only member of the extended family who would have had some kind of role at Wembley, but now chances are it might not be, because Featherstone Rovers are probably going to beat Widnes, aren't they? And their young winger wearing the number 5, extended family, will be playing at Wembley.
When you say Featherstone, you've got to say it like Peter Fox would. Featherstone Rovers.
James Webster doing a good job at Featherstone, because again he was another coach that people
much maligned.
Yes,
at Wakefield. Webster out
and Hull KR
did that one.
But quietly and effectively doing a good job at Featherstone.
Without the Leeds players on Joe Reg, 7 from 7. Can't get better than that.
And
so next week it could be Adrian Lamb. You never know.
One game away from Wembley. Could be leading his team out.
Yeah, first time since '83. They'll be empty. Fev will be empty.
Well, I hope so, because that means we've got a big crowd in the stadium.
Yeah.
So.
That's what this cup's all about. It's
83, that was a final.
Mick Quinn.
Yes.
The only man not from Featherstone.
David Hobbs.
The outlier from York.
Goes the try on him. Pumps his fist in the air with his headband on.
So when it's a Widnes versus Swinton final, now we've built this up as Featherstone versus York. Apologies to
we have no horse in either race. No. May the best teams win, but more importantly, enjoy their day out at Wembley, which is why I think this competition is so important. Because if you look at those 4 teams, the chances of them getting to a Challenge Cup final now, with the way the sport is, full-time, part-time, all those things we discuss on a week-to-week basis, to have the opportunity of any of those 4 clubs getting to Wembley will be massive for them.
I think Wembley is wide enough, so James Ward won't need his tape measure there.
Well, the wide open spaces of Wembley, I think it's always seems to have been often called.
I mean, I think that's the other thing with York.
Energy sapping legs.
Yeah, we talked about what York's aims would be this year and whether their league form has been a tad inconsistent. If they get to Wembley and they can market the club on the back of being at Wembley on the national stage, highlights if not the whole game on terrestrial television, come and support our club at our nice new stadium. I think that is probably more important to them this year than even winning the championship.
We should have Wembley bingo, shouldn't we, really? Wembley bingo.
Energy sapping turf.
Energy sapping turf, wide open spaces.
Martin Fire's try.
Martin Fire's try, yeah. Heads on the back of your neck, stand on end,
The walk in front of the fans.
Yeah.
The wall of noise.
The wall of noise, Abide with me. Ilka Morbartat.
No, now you've gone back too far now.
Only an hour
and of course,
for Eddie Ware.
And of course.
Oh, he missed it. He's missed it all.
He'll be crying.
It is a poor lad.
Bernard Manning doing the community
Bernard
singing.
did, yes, I remember. The most interesting thing about that was whether he'd get to the top of the ladder or not.
I mean, one
and who'd help him down.
One wouldn't want to comment, but if you got Jim Davidson in, it probably would attract a few Rugby League supporters there, but not you, obviously.
And other Wembley bingos, things like went past in a flash. Don't remember any of it.
Someone
don't wave to your family.
Go away to the family, yeah.
Steve Quinn.
Steve Quinn.
Dave says,
how
dare you call him Mick?
Oh,
Mick Quinn.
Did I say Mick?
Yeah, Mick Quinn.
Not Mickey Quinn.
No, Mick Quinn.
Not that one.
Steve.
Footballer and racehorse trainer.
No, not Mickey Quinn.
It's age. I'm glad I got Quinn.
Former
the mighty Quinn.
Mickey Quinn.
Yeah, the might. We'll go with the mighty.
At least Dave's watching. You can know watching.
I suppose
up the Rovers, Dave. Up the Rovers, Dave.
You could have your own Wigan Wembley bingo as well, couldn't you? Since they won, they sort of ruled the roost there for so long. Wigan went, oh, he's in for another try.
And cardboard challenge cups. Anyone can make a cardboard AB Sundex 1895 cup. If anyone knows what the 1895 cup looks like and can remember,
make a Sundeck.
Yeah, just
Cardboard
take some tin foil. Don't see enough tin foil trophies these days. That's what's wrong with sport. Right, results in the championship: Batley 26, Swinton 12, Bradford 37, York 18. Match under investigation from the pitch committee at the ECB. Halifax 8, Featherstone 16. Halifax in the bin. According to Featherstone Rovers Twitter, much consternation. London 30, Dewsbury 10, Oldham 18, Widnes 40, Sheffield 25, Warrington 25. They don't have golden point in the championship because they don't.
And why should they in any league game?
I'm a fan of golden point.
Why should they in any league? I'm not. I'm a fan of the golden point in a cup game, but in a league game I still think it should be a play for draw.
What I think is wrong is that we don't have the same rule throughout all the competitions. That's just ridiculous.
Totally. But I think leagues, draws should still be allowed, and cups. Fine, I can understand you want to get on with it, and it's a knockout anyway, isn't it? So it means that you get a knockout.
Yeah, but now we haven't even got the away goal.
It's a knockout.
Yeah,
there we go.
That's that's referencing the column. That's referencing the column. That's in. That's in. Don't play the computer game version of that. It's rubbish. What was I going to say about that?
I don't have any problem, by the way, with Bradford using the bin
Featherstone the bin thing.
Oh, Featherstone.
Yeah.
Because
Steve's not happy with it.
Don't we want clubs to have a rivalry?
I think like what they did with Oldham the other week when they said, "Can we score 100 or whatever it was?"
Yeah,
But,
clearly there is a line, but we want to promote rivalry. The next time Halifax play Featherstone, they now have a licence.
They don't like each other.
Yeah.
Wear masks.
But if you're going to play, I mean, I'd want to see a change to harp on it. I'm sorry to get on my soapbox here. But if you're going to play something like
nonsense.
If you're going to play Golden Point in a league situation, I think for me there has to be some reward, and I've absolutely rubbished that rugby union thing of bonus points. But that's the only time I could envisage it in a rugby league game. So if you went 3 points for a win per se, and then you got a golden point situation where at the end of 80 minutes, both teams can take a point, but then the team that goes on to win it gets 3. Then, all right, you've got something back for your efforts over the 80 minutes. It's an 80-minute game. It's a league game for me, and a cup game. Somebody's got to go through. It is a knockout, so yes, golden point, fine.
Right. Who do I write to? Do I write to Ralph Rim or Ken Davey with my ideas?
Sport is all about winners and losers.
Dear Ralph, please, for next season, can we have, for every team, a joker? And you play it before one game, double points. Double points.
Well, listen, sport is all about...
Rugby League doesn't need another joker.
West Wales, right, here we go.
I've just commentated on 4 days of cricket where one team couldn't win the game after the first 2 hours, and have been playing for a draw, and that would have been, in the end, a very, very honourable draw, but they finished 20 minutes short, if you like.
Explain that to a new supporter.
See, if you're watching on YouTube, there's a great deal of headroom above us, but if you're watching on Facebook, because the way I've set the camera up to get the Wi-Fi, the top of my head's missing, half my head is missing. It's like the Odsal pitch. Up there.
Do we need to measure your head?
If you saw Jimmy Anderson and Monty Panesar batting out time in 2009 in Cardiff, you'll know that a draw still means something.
Yeah, was that long ago?
Oh
dear me.
Well, I think it was 9, wasn't it? Or was it no, it was 9, yeah.
Dear me.
But League One.
League One, result. Well, I mean, how can... Right, I know... Right, League Express. No, they call it League Weekly there. That would be a big faux pas, wouldn't it? But...
Somebody like calling somebody Mickey Quinn.
I know you could call it League Weekly, thank you, for as a former
correspondent
for that honourable newspaper.
Club of the Week, Leeds Rhinos. No, it's not. I mean, I know, but, it's Coventry. They beat Rochdale Hornets 38-30.
Best result in
what sounds like a belting game, and only got a few less than London got. Barrow 44, North Wales 8, Keighley 40, Hunslet 8. I mean, London Scholars as well, 52-10 away at West Wales is a great score for them.
Strange game at Keighley though.
And Workington
0-0 at half time.
Yeah, I saw that and thought, what's going on there?
And then Keighley scored 40 in the second half, unanswered.
Do they have a hill at Keighley as well? I don't know about.
So a few betting patterns been checked out there, I'm sure.
But Coventry Bears 38, Rochdale Hornets 30.
That is massive.
What a result! Especially having lost last week to the Scholars, which would have been a game you'd have thought, that would be one of those ones they've got a very good chance of picking up the 2 points in.
Now, beating a team who everybody thought would be challenging for promotion at the end of this year, again, it just shows that the club's moving in the right direction, and I think we've seen, is it 3 or 4 junior clubs have been formed under the umbrella of the Bears organisation this year. Participation in the area is really high. Again, all funded by the Bears. Again, without wishing to go back to the academy debate, there is a way of getting talent through. And it should be the mandate of clubs to be able to provide pathways for kids. Clearly they've got untapped potential in that region, but they're doing it right. That's a massive result for the Bears. I know we're fans of theirs, but that's the biggest result in their history as a semi-professional club. I said it at the start of the podcast. Rochdale Hornets is a real scalp. Hats off to them. And I don't even wear a hat. If I did, it would be off.
We once went to...
and they were 24-16 down at half time.
We once commentated on the game, didn't we, at Rochdale, when they were playing York Wasps. 20 years ago.
Is it that long?
20 years ago, and York were in dire straits, weren't they? And playing players from the army and the services.
We nearly got
amateurs. There. We nearly got. Yeah.
We got there early.
Lee
Crook said, "You got any boots?" Oh no, it wasn't Lee, was it? Was it the Australian?
It was Leo Epifania, I think.
Yeah,
Leo Epifania, one of
the long forgotten names in the history of York.
And Rochdale absolutely annihilated York, didn't they? 90 odd points to not. Was it 0 or 4?
Well, it was normally 0.
Marlon Billy got quite a lot of tries.
That's a name I know.
If you're watching Marlon, just knock us a message in and out and tell us how many it was now, because I can't remember. I just kept saying, and Marlon Billy scored again, and Marlon Billy scored again.
And that was in the first 10 minutes.
And the wonderful Keith Macklin was sitting alongside. He was doing GMR, BBC GMR. Keith Macklin, sadly missed. Very good commentator.
It was. I must finish his autobiography because I've got it, and it's one of those books I've half read and then been distracted and not finished off.
Lovely fella.
He
really
was.
Nice chap.
He was. Fantastic guy.
Is that all we're going to say about League One, actually? I don't know. Barrow's still top, 4 wins from 4.
I just think, but what Barrow
unless
are
you're
doing
saying
is
well done to them
fantastic.
for getting all these tickets out there.
But also, trying to get themselves into the community more than ever before with so many different initiatives, and again, a massive admiration for. We spoke to them, didn't we, during lockdown about some of the plans they had, and hopefully it's coming to fruition for them. Big result for Doncaster winning at Workington.
Will Keithley be up there challenging, do you think? Have you seen enough of them? I'd covered their game against London in the Cup where they, well, to be honest with you, the standard of the match was poor. I've got to say, and that takes a bit for me to say that, but it honestly does. It wasn't, I mean, I don't play the game at that level, but it wasn't great. The ball was on the floor a lot, and it just looked like two teams who...
It was early in the season.
Introduced to each other, yeah. I think it was...
I think any team at that level with Scott Morrell in it could do anything.
So we think they're going to be there or thereabouts. And I know that, from speaking to... names escaped me for a moment. The coach.
Was it Mick Quinn?
No, Keithley coach.
Not Craig Lingard, he's at Batley.
No, yeah.
Lovegrove.
Yes, Reece Lovegrove. From speaking to Reece.
You don't even like me, I remember.
From speaking to Reece. Sorry, Reece. There's so many names in my head these days from cricket as well. From speaking to Reece just before that game, it's sort of reading between lines. I think there were more important games for the club than the London game that day.
Big test for them away at Workington this week.
Yeah.
I think we'll know a little bit more about Keithley after a game like that.
If you've got page 25 of your Rugby League Express, and if you hold it right up to your eyes, you can just about see the Forty20 TV logo on the Wakefield shirts, because Women's Super League was back this weekend after the break for the Challenge Cup. I wasn't at the game because I was at Wakefield. So I missed all the action down at the Wheatwood Sports Park, the home of Rugby League, where Wakefield
home of rugby.
Yeah, Buzzvale.
Well, wherever Wakefield play at home, that is the home of Rugby League. Sadly, it was a defeat at home to Featherstone Rovers, who won 52-10. But Wakefield scored 2 tries, so that's a improvement. Emma Kershaw, formerly of a guest of ours on the score sheet there. Well, I think her brother scored, did he? So shout did him.
What, Nick?
But I was there.
Wouldn't it be good to be in his shoes?
No. So that was good.
Don't be biting again. Mick Quinn's one thing.
But
I know, you did,
knowing Nick Kershaw,
Phil did say to me before you come on, this is very, very serious.
Yeah, serious programme.
Yeah.
But Fev are a good team. They're one of these teams who, I said before, they're the best of the rest, one of the best of the rest. And now that we have a top 5 in a sense, we'll see what happens with them. Wigan beat Huddersfield 68-10. A bit of a bump back down to earth for Huddersfield after their win the other week, but Wigan are a good side, as we know, boosted by the fact they've signed a couple of players recently. Abby Etok in the side for them.
From the Army.
A grand final winner. Bradford beat Warrington. I thought Warrington might get the win here.
First win of the season for Bradford, so congratulations to them.
40-28. Sutherland with a hat-trick. She's obviously their class player. Or one of their class players, I should say. And in a reversal from the Challenge Cup game the week before, and obviously I haven't seen this, York 18, Castleford 20. Well, we saw the game the week before, and Castleford had very little opportunities. This time they go and beat York.
Saw the try highlights and it looked like a real quality game.
I think Kelsey Gentles tweeted the same afterwards, didn't she? When you get the teams who are evenly matched against each other, you'll get better games. We've been saying that all season.
As long as the standard's going up and not being brought down, that's what you want.
I need to show that, by the way, to the camera. Do you get sort of a... Are you on a retainer with Martin or anything? No.
It's just the only paper in town now.
Okay, I thought I was doing you some good there.
It's either this or I don't know what can read, the Evening Post.
Martin's sponsor podcast.
Yeah. He could do his own podcast. I mean, they keep doing one and then stopping. They can do one again. Everyone can do a bloody podcast.
I brought embarrassment to the programme now, sorry.
No.
We love everyone.
Yeah. I mean, the only people who don't love we don't mention.
I'll keep quiet.
Saints top, they didn't play. Leeds second, they didn't play. Wigan and Castleford.
But we have got a Challenge Cup final.
We have got and I'm really looking forward to this. I'm not going.
I cannot wait.
You are going, I'm not going.
I am going.
I didn't apply because I thought it's limited media capacity at Lee, and I don't.
You do need a couple of seats these days.
Well, yeah, I don't really need to be there. See, I'm straight back at that one and just ignore that. Don't really need to be there because they're doing the pressers post-match online anyway, so I don't need to be there. So I'm not going, as it turns out.
I'm looking forward to it because I think it offers everything we hoped about the progress of the women's game. That it'll have a national TV platform. How many will be watching at 11:15 on a Saturday? I don't know, but that's immaterial.
Yeah, I don't think it matters, does it?
And it's a story, isn't it? Saints, who are absolutely desperate for glory, were superb in their semi-final with that desire to right a wrong against the team, that is recruited.
They've just signed an England Rugby Union player.
Which again,
Sevens,
brilliant. How good that a York-born England Rugby Union Sevens player is now playing Rugby League for York. Yeah, it's the future. Looking forward to it very much.
Always open. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the final. I'm still going to go with Saints to win, but
I think Saints will. But again, you look at the York club, and if their women have got to the Challenge Cup final, and their men get to the AB Sundex final, it's already a good year.
Come on, York.
And they move into their new stadium. It's you go to York.
Yorkshire, isn't it?
It is.
I'm a Yorkshireman.
He is. He's sullied by the Roses match.
I'm neutral, so I'm going Yorkshire.
I look forward to the press conference afterwards. I'll be there, sat in my studio at home, waiting to ask some important questions. I don't know what I'll ask.
Well, you got a great reaction from Jodie Cunningham, didn't you?
What's it feel like to win Challenge Cup? How does it feel?
Jodie's enthusiasm when you interviewed her came across.
Some of that game from that kind of thing. So
just another game.
Some of the game for us. But it is amazing to think because we were there
not long
3 years ago.
It's not long.
At Warrington, on a wing and a prayer with 2 cameras, some wires and some stuff borrowed from the BBC.
And some of us nearly got thrown out before it even started.
We brought you the final.
You nearly got thrown out?
Yeah, we nearly got... Pete Smith
did they know who they were talking to?
Yeah, that's why. but I can't say it, it's funny anyway. I'll say after the program. But we did it, and look where we are now. I'm not there, but I'll be there in spirit. Whoever's, I hope they've got the right people on the telly to do it anyway.
I also think that it'll be fantastic if we could get somebody like Claire Balding there, either presenting the trophy or part of the coverage, because you're hitting that. She said when she was president of took the role of president leading into the World Cup that she really wanted to promote women's rugby.
Well, no, she's rubbish, Phil, because
is she?
Pete Corriboy of Warrington has written to the Rugby League Express. You may have heard of them. Watching Claire Balding with Alan Titchmarsh on TV, she was talking about crowds coming back to sport. Who's watching Alan Titchmarsh? What's he on? I don't even know what channel
he's on. Was it Gardening Pro?
She mentioned horse racing. She's very horsey. Wimbledon, she presents that. I've seen her on it. Does the tennis. And the Olympics. Mrs. Olympics.
But not Rugby League.
But there was not one word about the Rugby League World Cup. One opportunity missed. Is she taking her role as RFL president seriously? Yes, she is.
She loves it.
What was she supposed to have I don't know if she's had the COVID jab or not. I assume she's not one of these anti-vaxxers who there are a few of them in Rugby League. Some of them work at clubs.
She loves it. She's a She's a great presenter.
She is.
She is, but
she's a great advocate for the sport.
I assume when she got the chains, they implant a chip in her that says mention Rugby League, mention Rugby League, mention Rugby League, mention Rugby League.
I'm still a bit sort of spooked by this. Nearly got kicked out. That business, Phil. You nearly got kicked out.
Yeah.
I cannot believe that. The most well-mannered, respectful.
Oh, I think I was well-mannered and respectful. I just don't think they like what I said. That was all.
The basic premise was it was the final. Well, all 4 teams involved were from West Yorkshire, weren't they? Because the challenge plate was Stanley versus Bradford, and the final, of course, was Leeds versus Cass
in Warrington.
In Warrington. So we all had trips over.
There was an opinion. The opinion was, "Do you think this is the right venue?" Expecting the answer yes, to be told the answer was no.
Off you go. Oh, okay. Yeah. No,
Why?
Still a polite, respectful, wrong answer. What's the problem? Was somebody in a yellow high-vis jacket?
We're still here.
I couldn't possibly comment.
I once got yellow high-vis jacketed at Wigan. I think you were probably there. We probably walked across from that car park over the water together and showed the pass at the right gate. The press box or whatever it was, just whatever the gantry, just up to the right.
Lovely, yes.
But no, I wasn't allowed in that gate to go up to that gantry there. I had to go all the way around the ground to the far corner, bang opposite where we were.
You just think
in the ground to walk all the way back round to go up to the gantry.
Scully gets you in anyway, that's the good thing.
Scully got fined, didn't he? Legend, you got fined. I went to cover a game for Radio Yorkshire. And he drove me over. And seriously, he drove me over and... right, Doidge. He always calls me Doidge. Right, Doidge, we're parking in here. He parked in that shopping car park next to the ground. Pulled in there. And I said, they've just driven under a barrier that said fines or whatever it is. They won't fine us. They'll never fine us. 100 quid. When we got back out after the game. And he got off. He refused to pay it and he managed to get off. Unbelievable.
Do you know who I am?
Yeah.
No. Oh, we lost
the future chairman of Barley.
Oh no, yeah, we lost you a reader last week, by the way. So apologies for that.
Did you?
Yeah. Well, no, I didn't because I didn't really say anything about academies. Yeah. Well, what happened was someone Sky Sports tweeted about the academies, and someone tweeted us saying, "I was very disappointed that you didn't come out and say Ralph Rimmer's a Burke or something, and we should go and burn down Red Hall,
even though they've moved down.
Even more good reason to burn it down." And someone replied to that tweet saying, "That's me, I'm going to cancel, I'm not going to read 4020 again," which one suspects A, they never read the magazine in the first place, and B, they haven't even listened to what we said, so there's no point.
Right. Okay.
But
can't please all the people all the time.
No, I don't know what more we can say about that anyway, because there isn't anything more to say other than that.
Well, Hull KR, probably Castleford and likely Bradford are going to appeal. It'd be very, very interesting to see what that appeal says, because if the appeal upholds Hull KR's right to have an academy, then somebody at the RFL will have an untenable position.
I think the issue, as we said last week, A, we're not in possession of seeing the responses of the club. We might even know what questions have been asked within the franchise-type licensing document, but we don't know what the respective replies were to compare them. Therefore, to talk about individual clubs is a route that is completely non-productive and is based only on emotion. I think what we said was it's very, very hard at this time to pick out one part of the game and apply something to it that doesn't reflect the rest of the game. And if the real answer is A, there is less money, how do you spend it? And that's fact. And B, there is less recruitment at the community and junior level, how do you improve it and preserve what's already there? Then there is some degree of rationale behind decisions that are being made. Whether they're right or wrong, they are going to affect everybody, and some are not going to be affected. Brimmer had on Sky may have been really valid. It was the inability perhaps to get those messages over and get sidetracked by there are dreams of kids. As I say, I was watching Hull KR and Leeds, and Nick Pinkney, who was summarising for BBC Radio Humberside, was saying any kid is still going to have a pathway. You know, if you're playing, keep playing. Don't take this decision as your route has been blocked. If you are a really talented kid, no matter who you're playing for at whatever level, you will find a way through. So I think all of the dream bit is emotion.
Yeah.
The truth is, if you've got very limited resource, how best do you use it? But don't apply that just to the academy.
We're still back to the argument of minimum standard type things, aren't we? Back to the stadia.
It's framing the future.
To a Wakefield fan, you know.
We've said, we've written about it, that Framing the Future was a document that,
got it at home, yeah.
that outlined where the sport should have been going. And that was before Super League came in. I think it was it 94 it was first published, and then 97 we revisited it, but we've never instituted it. And yet that is a blueprint. If you started from there about imposing standards across the game, would take the game forward.
Yeah,
and we never did it.
No. It's one of the best things, if not the best thing that I've read with regard to a positive future for the sport.
And it took fans into account, because the standards that they wanted to bring in were all about what you could expect on a game day, what you not expect, but what was a minimum requirement.
Yeah, great piece of work that.
We didn't do it.
And here we are.
But it boils down to people taking the mickey out of Angela Powers talking about baby changing facilities on Sky or something.
I think, again, one of the things that's in the paper that I think is attributed to Gary Hetherington, who I know, not everybody sees the game the same way he does, has pointed out the fact that being in Super League should be mandatory to have an elite academy, to produce the conditions whereby you have one. Now, is that the RFL or the clubs or the game as a whole that at the moment has teams in Super League that can't produce that? If you just deal with that issue on its own in isolation, it goes back to our question about Toulouse, which is why I think they're linked. What do you want the sport to look like? How is it going to move forward? What standards are you going to impose across the game for every club to move it forward?
If I was a club who my MP was going to write a letter, though, to Ralph Rimmer, I would have said to my MP, here's some more recent academy graduates from my club, rather than one who played 10 years ago and two who've retired. But that would just be my opinion, because at least it makes it more relevant than referring to players who retired.
It's also a relevant point that if you produce some really talented players through your academy, but they've gone off and played for another club who picked them off. I think there was a lot of really great PR around Toby King signing his new 4-year deal.
9.3%.
Brilliant.
9.3%.
But what was forgotten in all that debate about how I've been here for and I want to leave a legacy is it's actually out of the Huddersfield Academy system. I also think that what's changed, and again, if people don't want to buy a magazine on the back of it, that's absolutely fine. It's just an opinion. Is that when we went full-time professional as a sport and rugby league became a career for kids, where you were born is still very important, but it's less important than having a career in the sport. So if you are relying on rugby league for your income and you are at a club that is not at elite level, you will, to have a career in the sport, go and play like Toby King did for another club to get the career that rewards you in the way that you deserve. And that's the nature of the beast. That loyalty is not the same as it was. And there isn't this sort of handcuff deal with the place you were born anymore. If you need to make your career out of playing rugby league, and there's so many limited opportunities, you may well be playing for a club that is not the one you were born, in the area you were born.
Richard Mallers would be an absolutely standout example of that, wouldn't he?
Well, that every club has got people playing for them who the fans laud and adore, who have moved to that club to be a professional rugby league player. And whilst we should acknowledge and recompense both the community clubs and the academy system they came through, the truth is that you have to go where the money is if you want to be a professional player. And I think the other thing is scholarship is probably more of an issue than academy. That if you seriously want to preserve the community game and you want to give a pathway through for kids and you want to give them the best experience and you want to bring back inter-town games which gives some players representative experience that aren't going to go on and make it as full-time professionals, you want to keep them involved in the sport, the scholarship area is the one that probably needs reviewing and revising and not necessarily the academy one. But if you don't do it all linked together, it doesn't work.
No, it's trying to fit the wrong pieces of a jigsaw together, isn't it?
Well, you're dealing with the first floor of your building, you're not dealing with the top floor or the foundations.
Yeah.
I've been waiting for an opportunity to re-edit this advert from the 70s advertising jobs in coal. It says, try telling these lads there's no future in coal. They'll probably have a good laugh. I just have to rub out coal and put Rugby League in there. And it'll be great.
Do you think we should write Frame in the Future too?
This time it's personal.
Yeah.
Will they believe it? The return of Frame in the Future. Some things...
Frame in the Future, second blood.
I know. Some things on social media... before we do the predictions of stuff.
Are we?
Well, it's only the Challenge Cup, isn't it? So only the Challenge Cup. Has the RFL coffin got the most nails in it than any other coffin in the world? If the decision hasn't gone the way for a Rugby League fans club, then it's the final nail in the game's coffin, says Kev, the St Helens fan. How many nails have you put in, what's it called? Christian Wolf's coffin, Kev? How are you feeling in one again?
Every governing body in every sport is coming under criticism at the moment, and it's an economic-based criticism.
Cass fans, of course, winners of the week with their chant to Luke Gale, we paid for your hair, we paid for your hair. We're Castleford Tigers, we paid for your hair.
And he did appreciate it, which again I think said a lot about the sport.
Andy says, what's happened to John Bateman's form? Not a patch on the NRL. Ever since he was in that letter about Bradford's academy.
I think it's safe to say that he isn't producing at a level that he did at Canberra. I suspect there is some adjustment to playing in Super League. It's not the same as the NRL. And come the big games towards the end of the season, he'll probably be a candidate for man of the match.
Pressure.
Well, what about Zach, who we spoke about at the beginning of the programme, who claimed, perhaps with some foundation he was the best fullback in the league, and since then has not delivered. So
I asked a question ages ago about Ryan Hall. Has that instant played Zach Hardick around the England squad?
Probably.
Possibly. He's a class player, though. He's a very, very high-class player. And, yes, well, I totally get all the buts, absolutely, but in pure...
he's a natural.
No one's denying his talent, is he? That's the thing.
And what he produces on the field of play, with the exception of what he produced as far as Joel Tompkins was concerned over the weekend, he's top draw, and you have clearly committed yourself on to the Sam Tompkins.
Only because he's playing the best of every fullback that I've seen this year.
For me, he's right up there.
Consistency that Sam is showing at the moment is back to his absolute best in his first spell at Wigan.
You heard it here first.
The batteries
Sean Wayne may have said it first.
Second, yeah.
The batteries have died on the recorder, so I can't wait to hear how this sounds when we nick the audio off YouTube. It's going to be great. Prediction time, I think. Let's go backwards. Castleford, Warrington, 5 o'clock. BBC 2. Are they all BBC 2? I don't know.
Yes.
Silence.
Me?
You can if you want.
Okay. I'm going to stick my neck out here. I'm going to stick my neck out and go Yorkshire. I think...
There's a thing.
This programme has a bad enough reputation as it is.
I think there's a performance in there somewhere, and they might just upset the apple cart this weekend. So I'm actually going to... They're going to nick it. I'm going to go Cass. Cass to beat Warrington. I know. I'm up there for ridicule now, I'm sorry. But,
if Cass can hold them for long enough, they have a chance. But I just think that the way Warrington are playing at the moment, their record in the Challenge Cup of recent years, I've got to go with Warrington after what we saw this week.
Two coaches who want to win silverware in their last seasons with the respective clubs.
Yeah, I'm going Warrington, and be really interesting to see what happens at Cass if they do get defeated.
Ryan Sheridan in charge for the end of the season.
Well, Lee Rafford could come in tomorrow, couldn't he?
Good.
I just want to see Darryl.
But I would love to see Darryl go out in where the work that he's done at that club.
Yeah,
wearing the lid on his head.
Get rewarded.
I don't know Darryl really, really well, because we don't get to know that many people that really, really well doing our job, do we? But the Darryl I know from doing interviews with him, and great. He's always great, cooperative, and I just love to hear his dour played down of we got to the final and just
I think that the other thing is when you look at the semi-finals, there's one club who haven't had their name on the cup recently, and one thing this sport does need are new names on trophies. and that will be Cass.
I mean, the good news is with that Castleford Warrington game is you can go home and be home in time for Daryl's presser. So
sometime on Sunday morning.
I mean, he could do a Naomi.
He's been good. He was good on Friday night. He was good. He was good.
Castle banned me from their press list next. Warrington.
Warrington for you.
Warrington. To really upset the RFL, I'll go for a Warrington Saints final because we had that a couple of years ago and it didn't do well with it ticket wise. Saints versus Hull. I'm going to go with Saints because I'm just going for the easy ones, man. I don't go for anything else.
Warrington, they've got not a great record against Saints, have they, over the years? I know they've nicked one or two, I seem to recall, but often it's been a case of they've not played. Over the course of Super League, for example, they've often been done. I've no idea. I've not got the facts on paper, but it feels like Saints beat Warrington a lot.
The RFL haven't sent us an email yet with all the stats on, so I can't tell you.
So what about the semi? Are you assuming Saints are going to get there?
Yeah, I think Saints will beat Hull.
Well, I think this might be a...
Well, you're going for the shot, right? Okay.
Because I just think Brett Hodgson has got something there at the moment, and I think the ability to turn that team around against Wigan, he can do it. I think they've got the armoury that can trouble St Helens, and if they can get Saints in an arm wrestle from the beginning, like they did Wigan in the quarter-final, where they were absolutely dominant, I think there's a performance in Hull.
Well, they've conceded nearly twice as many points as Saints this year.
They were the underdogs going into the Wigan game, but they found a way to win it. I think they've got the tactics and the personnel that will unsettle St Helens. So if there's going to be a shot,
you've got the wrong shot, boys. You've got the wrong shot. Gas it's going to be glorious for Gas because they're struggling recently. It's going to be. I can see it now.
It's an all Yorkshire fight.
No, Yorkshire Lancashire final. Yorkshire Lancashire final, that'll say more, won't it?
That's what they always want.
The community.
And the other prediction is that Yorkshire will beat Sussex, which is a 4-day game starting at Headingley on Thursday, folks.
I've not been to watch cricket at Headingley for a long time.
You haven't told us who you think's going to win it.
I said St Helens because it's going to be Saints Warrington final.
Right.
Tickets on Groupon the week before everyone can moan at Ralph because he is at fault for everything. And of course, before that. It is the women's Challenge Cup final. They should call it the men's Challenge Cup final. Just stick the word men in there. It's easy enough done. And why is the women's final not on with the rest of it on the back of the paper?
No, I did wonder that.
Because it's on actual telly rather than on our league. York, underdogs York versus overdogs St Helens. A battle of the England coaching staff and stuff. They've been put up to speak by the RFL on Thursday.
I can't go beyond Saints. I think just the way the desire that they had in that semi-final.
Was that their final? No. Was that their final beating Leeds?
I think they are desperate to win silverware. They've been the bridesmaids so often, that they and Cass, that they've been in training probably longer than most teams. They've got quality added to their side this year. I can't. I hope York have a fabulous day out and have a taste of what it's like, but I can't see Saints losing the women's fight.
No.
I always think St Helens, don't I? And then
Leeds win.
And then Leeds win.
Well, they ain't going to happen.
No, they can't, no. Well, if Leeds will dominate the TV, I'm sure they will.
I suspect our friend may well be part of the team.
You know, you'd hope so, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not supposed to have Wednesday. Right, we're done. Mr. Doidge, thank you. What's your podcast called?
No. Sporting Lives with Jonathan Doidge.
His name and the title.
It's on YouTube, or there's an audio-only version on Podbean and iTunes and Spotify and all those sort of things. So if you don't want to watch this ugly mug, then you can just listen to it if you want.
It's so good. He put his name to it, like Victor Kaya. The magazine's not... The current magazine is out still, look.
It is the current one.
Buy it. It's got all kinds of things in, like Tony Smith. And some pictures. It's got lots of pictures. It's got Gary Neville. But I've written some stuff in there. But not a lineman got cut, I assume. But this sporting life's in there. That's in there. Martin Cannon's in there. And, a painting, Ellis Lowry, he's done a painting of Rugby League. Well, he's not done it recently, obviously. Rugby League's famous.
It's there for your entertainment, edification.
And Phil and Johnson's book, Super League, the first 10 years.
In a dump bin near you.
In your local Salvation Army shop. Do you know how much I actually paid for that book?
Whatever it was. Do
You
you need a refund?
You're doing it back.
25 pence.
Really?
Yeah.
It's only 24 more than it's worth.
25 pence. Let me say goodbye to Facebook.
A lot of work went into that.
Yeah. Can't beat second-hand books, can you? Love and no Leeds shows. Yeah, I don't think we mentioned Leeds that much. Go on the wire, says Andy. Go on the wire. We hate you, really. No, we don't. He thinks we hate Warrington.
We don't hate anybody.
I mean, we do. I'm going to tell you who we hate, but I'll done it after we end the stream. Ta-ra, everybody. Thanks for watching.